Imagine waking up at 2 in the morning, stepping into a canoe loaded with hundreds of pounds of cargo and paddling non-stop for 16 hours straight, through freezing rapids, through clouds of black flies so thick they blocked out the sky, across lakes so big they looked like oceans, and then doing it again the next day, and the day after that, for months. That was the life of the French-Canadian voyagers, the toughest, most legendary paddlers in Canadian history. And if you've never heard their full story, you're in for a wild ride. The voyagers were the engine of the North American fur trade, operating from roughly the 1680s all the way to the 1870s. At their peak, around 1810, there were as many as 3,000 of them working the waterways. Most were hired straight off the farms and villages of the St. Lawrence Valley, young French-Canadian men, usually in their early 20s, most of whom couldn't read or write. They signed multi-year contracts with the big fur trading companies, mainly the Northwest Company and later the Hudson's Bay Company, in exchange for pay, equipment, clothing, and basic food. The word voyageur literally means traveler in French. And travel they did. These men were the critical link between the trading posts deep in the wilderness and the merchants back in Montreal. Without them, the entire fur trade, one of the foundations of what would become Canada, simply didn't work. You could spot a voyageur by his look, a red or blue wool toque, a flashy arrowhead sash around his waist, moccasins on his feet, and a pipe almost always within reach. Compact, barrel-chested, and incredibly strong. The job actually selected for shorter men, they took up less space in a canoe. The voyagers traveled a vast network of waterways that stretched across the continent, routes originally mapped by indigenous peoples who taught the French how to navigate them. The main highway of the fur trade ran from Lachine, just outside Montreal, all the way west to Grand Portage on the western shore of Lake Superior, a journey of over 1,200 miles. That trip alone took 6 to 8 weeks, and there were about 36 portages along the way. The route had two classes of voyageurs. The mangeurs de l'art, or pork eaters, were the younger, greener men who paddled the big Montreal canoes, called the canot de maître, along this main route. Those giants were up to 36 feet long and could carry 4 tons of cargo. Then there were the hivernants, the winterers. These were the elite. They took smaller canoes called canot du nord, north canoes, and pushed beyond Lake Superior deeper into the continent, up through the Great Lakes, into what is now northern Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and beyond. Some routes extended all the way to the Athabasca district, over 4,500 kilometers from Montreal. These were the men who spent the winter in the bush, trading directly with First Nations communities, and only emerged in spring loaded with furs. The hivernants looked down on the pork eaters, and the pork eaters dreamed of one day earning the title of winterer. So what did it actually take to do this job? First, paddling. Voyagers paddled at 40 to 60 strokes per minute and kept that pace for up to 16 or 18 hours a day. They sang to keep their rhythm, songs like À la Claire Fontaine, Alouette, and En Roulant Ma Boule weren't just for fun. They were a metronome. Every stroke in sync, every song another kilometer closer to the rendezvous. Second, portaging. When a river was too rapid or too shallow, the canoes and all their cargo had to be carried overland. Each voyager was required to carry a minimum of 2 bundles on his back. Each bundle weighed 90 pounds. That's 180 pounds minimum. Some carried 4 or 5. There are records of a voyager carrying 7 bundles for half a mile. The weight was held in place by a tumperline, a strap across the forehead. Hernias were so common from this work that they frequently caused death. Third, canoe repair. A birch bark canoe could be damaged every single day, on rocks, on branches, in rapids. Voyagers carried repair kits of birch bark, spruce root, and pine pitch and would patch their canoe by firelight after a 16-hour paddling day. They had to be part paddler, part mechanic. Fourth, wilderness survival. These men slept under their overturned canoes. They endured mosquitoes, black flies, frostbite, and violent storms on open lakes. Most of them couldn't swim, which made every rapid a gamble with their life. And finally, people skills. The Voyagers' relationship with First Nations peoples was central to the entire operation. They relied on indigenous knowledge of the land